Well, welcome everybody. We are really happy to be here and really happy that you've decided to join us as well. The format is that we're going to speak for about an hour um, and then have Q&A at the end.
This is out of the 4 sessions we're running this month. This is the 3rd one, and the most amount of interest. There's over 100 of you have signed up for this. We started using the term community sufficiency around 10 years ago, and what we were doing was not self-sufficiency, and we needed a language to speak to what we were actually doing, while at the same time critiquing self-sufficiency as being quite lacking in resilience because of the nature of having to hold so much rather than share the labors, share the load, and rebuild the village. And so the term, when we coined that term, we were really focused on the power of language as well. We've come up with a number of terms like permapoiesis, for example, for permanent making, social warming, a whole range of stuff. But community sufficiency really seems to have got legs as a term, and it's being used very broadly now, which is really exciting to see. So when we started off, we were a household that was pretty much 100% reliant on the monetary economy for everything. We both had jobs, we both had cars, we shopped. With a relative amount of frugality. We op-shopped at that stage. We come from the arts, so there was a fair degree of knowing how to live off the smell of an oily rag. But we were still very much beholden to what I call the banker's realm, or the financial industrial complex. And that really, really irked me. In my young activist warrior self, I needed to work out a way in which I wouldn't be stood over by such, mostly men, who have for many, many thousands of years, slowly progressing into quite a complex system of control, have pretty much organized our lives around paying back debt, and incarcerating us into much work that doesn't fill our soul and doesn't have purpose, or isn't necessarily a job that's inspiring us and wanting us to lean into the village and lean into roles of care and kinship with more than human life. So I guess the difference between self-sufficiency and community sufficiency is, one is more narrow self-interested and the other is broad self-interested. So of course it's still the individual, or the household, or the small neighborhood group, or the broader community group. These are sort of zones, like in a permaculture. There has to be, I think, volunteerism in Australia, the retiring and then working for charities, has been the sort of the remnants of the village that's been smashed by industrial capital. And so how do we put that back together? How do we walk that back step by step, hand in hand? Well, for us, it's like starting with the household and moving out. And so by learning to grow food and learning to forage abundant wild foods and mushrooms, wild plants and mushrooms, learning how to snare rabbits and then hunt rabbits, learning how to fish or get better at fishing, learning to make most of our transits by hitchhiking or public transport or bicycles or walking. All the little tiny things we put in place over 20 years. In fact, Meg and I are celebrating 20 years tomorrow. So we're in anniversary mode. Yeah, so the last 20 years coming together, doing a lot of dancing, having a lot of fun, but also there's a serious side to us too, our environmentalisms coming together and joining them together into a household. Thanks for the love. Our environmentalisms coming together. Meg, a city girl, me, a country fella, and integrating what we both learned and along the way. And then a whole bunch of amazing films like The Power of Community, which is based in Cuba, turning off the oil taps in Cuba in the 90s or 80s or 90s. And the film, I think, was a bit later. But and yeah, just Vandana Shiva's work, just a whole bunch of really incredible films because Sue Dennett and Maureen Gleason, Corbett, sorry. Thanks, Maureen and Sue, two elders in our village, organized this thing called Hepburn Relocalization Network, which we later became involved with, and brought these incredibly empowering and inspiring films. So I'm more someone tending towards, intrigued in the doom and gloom, and particularly back then. And so, yeah, carried a lot of anger for the state of power and what I call fallen patriarchal power and how that organizes us economically. So, yeah, so this is where we've arrived at pretty much 80% non-reliant on the monetary economy after 20 years is this slow step-on-step unfolding. And we want to talk about all the different parts of that to sort of set a foundation for tonight. And then we're really keen. We've been having half an hour Q&As, but we might try and finish a little bit earlier and get to your questions, because I think that will really help finish the night. Yeah, so 100% reliance on money. And then in the early days, we started to do a household audit and listing like what are the big ticket items. And we looked at, car use was really a huge one. And recognizing in Australia, probably pretty similar to most countries, particularly Five Eyes countries, that car use, about 2.5 cars per household in Australia, and each car costing around $16,000 a year. So it's, these are figures from 10 years ago when I did my doctorate. It's actually probably more like, maybe $45,000 a year for the average Australian household to have a car. And that's with wear and tear, depreciation of vehicle, petrol costs, insurance, fines, everything associated with car use, parking, tickets, etc., etc. So factoring all that in, yeah. So back 10 years ago, it was about 35,000 per household, but it's probably more like 45,000 these days. So recognizing that was probably 50% of our not that we had the average or the mean price car in Australia. We had like secondhand old bombs, but it was probably around, I don't know, $10,000 to $15,000 costing us to have two cars in our household. So we got rid of our cars and probably got rid of 50% or 40 to 50% of our economic needs by just parking one car, or sorry, selling one car immediately once we'd made the decision, and then parking one car with a logbook on the seat for a year. And then after that year, we looked at all the times we needed it, and we decided that no, we'll sell this. And we converted the first car into some pretty nice bikes, and rather than the beat up bikes we had. So we had good pedals, and then that led to all sorts of wonderful things, like a big 400-day road trip as a family from the southern Australia to the north on the east coast, and lots of things like that, taking permaculture to the road. And also, like, we had become by then, but that was about 10 years ago. So after the first 10 years, we'd become so time rich and so used to being cash poor that we'd put a whole lot of knowledges back together that our ancestors in a low energy past, our peasant ancestors and indigenous ancestors knew these things, knew how to track and snare and fish and grow and forage. And I don't know if many of you would probably be aware of retrosuburbia. So in that book, there's when Woody was just a little baby and Meg would wake up, would be up through the night feeding. I would wake up at like about 5:36 and then take Woody for a 2-hour walk every morning. And in that time, over that period, I just mapped all the different wild foods I was finding around the town. I'm not sure if you can see that map, but that's online somewhere. It's called the Daylesford Food Commons map. It's probably a little bit out of date now, but it showed all the different public fruits around the town, where all the different mushrooms grew, where rabbits and redfin were, where there was community gardens or publicly accessible food. So I'm going to hand over to you, because I feel like that's probably set a bit of a. Do you want to talk about the groups?
Yeah. Yep. So Patrick has been living in this area for 30 years and I've been here 20. We met just after I moved here. And it took me a number of years to find my crew, find my peeps. And I remember, a few times coming home and just feeling so exasperated and just saying, like, where are my women? Where's my crew? And it wasn't until we helped establish with a number of other people and families the Daylesford Community Food Gardens. We had a working bee to set up the first site. And that's when I said to him, like, here are my people. Now I know that they're here. I just had to be part of this to find them. So we were helping with the coordinators for the food gardens for a decade or so, and have recently stepped away from that. But it was helping establish that and finding our tribe, or me finding my tribe, that I realized actually it's quite simple, that you just have to set up a group of something that you're interested in, and then people will come, and that's how you find your peeps. So that gave me a lot of confidence to help set up a number of groups, including Daylesford Culture Club, which was a monthly free fermenting group. And that was really important in my evolution as a fermenter and as a member of this community, because it helped me. I was getting into fermenting because Patrick kept growing loads of vegetables and I needed to process them, and wanted to process them, and wanted to not just give all the cabbages away, for example, but also make sauerkraut. So I was like wanting to troubleshoot with people. So I helped establish this group, and that was a really great way to meet people and to develop the knowledges of fermenting in our community. And it wasn't gold coin donation, it wasn't a fee, it was free. And I feel like that also enabled lots of people to come along who might not have ordinarily come along. So it was my first kind of foray, apart from the community gardens, of like just offering something and then being part of something and seeing where it goes. We also helped set up a group called Upis, which was also a free monthly natural beekeeping group. We're also part of Wild Fennel, which was a free monthly herbal medicine group. So we kind of coordinated it, and there are a number of local herbalists who would actually run it, who had the knowledges. And sometimes it was held in our garden in the warmer months, and sometimes other community places in the cooler months. There's the Forest and Free, which is the bush group that we facilitate for kids who don't go to school every Monday, and various versions of that over the last 10 years. Also, the men's and women's circles that we're part of, the Castlemaine Rites of Passage community that we were part of for many years. We're also helped establish a food co-op in our community that is still going strong 13 years later. And it started off in a very small cupboard, just had a couple of things, and now has expanded into a very big place. And about 250 families shop there every week. So it's really wonderful in terms of food security and bioregional sufficiency. Also we were part of, over the years, a goat club before we had goats. It's funny, we never went after we got goats. But you also did set up the goat hand cooperative. But yeah, that's just a taster of some of the groups that we've established and helped facilitate or been a part of over the years. And all offered in the gift economy. Yeah.
And I think that's a really important part of reclaiming ancestral knowledges in a commons, where these groups, while Meg and I did a lot of the organizing or co-organizing with others to set up these groups, it was the brains trust that already existed, and inviting people in who may be shy to share, but we would create a place that was welcoming. Sometimes it was a gold coin donation if there was a visiting fermenter, but generally, or to pay for the hall, the council hall. But generally, we did all of this stuff without any, there was no payment. But we live in an area where there's actually a lot of, I guess, food influencers that hold a lot of these workshops for several $100s for a day or for the weekend, and that just felt not in this. Well, it's just a different model, a different way, a different life philosophy.
Yeah, it's privatizing knowledge, and of course, there's the argument that everybody has to, make money. But I think to offer things in the knowledge economy, or the commons, the knowledge commons. And we've been so grateful over the years for people who have shared their knowledge with us, and we've, helped out on workshops to, in lieu of paying for a ticket for things. Yeah, it just felt like it's, the more people who have these knowledges, the better it is for us and the community.
Yeah, and some examples of that, where there's the monetary economy and then the shared economy. Friends of ours, a Greek Australian friend whose grandparents handed down all the edible and medicinal weeds common to here, and he learnt those from his grandparents, and then would take out through the neighborhood local neighborhood center, he would run very affordable little courses for like $20 or $30. And we go out foraging for 4 hours. And then I did that course several times. And then the same thing with a mycologist friend of ours. Her courses were a bit more expensive. But after the first one, because the information is so dense and mycology is another whole level of complexity, I then volunteered as a helper for the next 2 or 3 courses, and then that really cemented my knowledge. And now I probably know over 30 edible species around here. Well, I do know 30 edible species of mushrooms around here, of which we probably only incorporate 8 to 15 throughout the season.
So one of the questions someone just posted is, any tips for setting up a group? Yeah, I think backing yourself and not just coming into a community and saying, oh, I know what this community needs, but actually seeing where, being part of a community first and seeing where the need is.
And also an area that you want to learn in. That's the broad self-interest. You're inspired to do the organizing because you want to learn in that area. So that's what gives you the energy. But then you're wanting to get a community brains trust around that. And, this doesn't necessarily even have to happen, of course, this is a little sort of pop-up virtual community. This is one of the great gifts of the internet, despite the many non-gifts that are.
Yeah, but I think in setting up a group, to do it in an area that you love and that you're passionate about, because I think because I ran someone's asking about insurance. We some of the groups we didn't have insurance ourselves, but we were auspiced by other incorporated organizations. Because we were non-monetary, we wanted to keep it that way, but we were auspiced by an incorporated body who had insurance. So we had to pay some of that insurance. So maybe once a year. Yeah, thank you for that. That's a good question. I did forget about that. Once a year, for example, with the fermenting group, every year we ran a bread making. A whole lot of different bakers would come in and talk about their methods, and we'd have taste tests for breads, and that was always the most popular session of the year. So for that one, we would charge gold coin donation or in the gift. And then for that one, we were able to cover our share of the insurance for the year, which was like $50 or $60. But I ran that for 5 years, every single month for free, and only stopped because of COVID. And I kept it up because I loved it. And I loved all the different people who would come along, and people would bring in their different ferments and, can you smell this? Can you taste this? What's wrong with this? Let's all talk about our pickles. And it was such a joy to be part of that community. I would like to still be running it now.
Yeah. So one of the other things that leads on from that question is that when we started, we thought that our local councils, as local government, is at least has some sort of possibility for real democracy, and for many years, since for a bit, as Meg said, I've been here for 30 years, and I've been in different groups for, whether it be a community consultant for the redevelopment of the main street of the town, which we had some really incredible designs after 2.5 years of us, like removing traffic, having much more green spaces, having public fruit and vegetables up in the main street, having like a range of different places for people to gather, like actually make a square. But all of these groups, and another group, the bushfire mitigation group, where myself and some other fellows were in a thing called Goat Hand Cooperative, and we were using goats as a bushfire mitigation tool or a strategy. And what and so many other groups over the years, different community groups to save for example, the pontoon in the lake where kids and others would love to swim out to and hang out on the pontoon, but the council got rid of it because it was deemed unsafe. And there's just been so many engagements with council, and really what we've come, and this gets back to the insurance question, doing stuff in our own backyards or under cover or just as groups, like the way we run our bush school without insurance. We had 2 homeschooling parents that take out up to 25 kids every Monday into the forest, and that was the subject of our last session. And yeah, we do it without insurance, and so we're walking a line. We don't have house insurance. We've got a video about that the day that we got rid of our insurance, because we feel so now aware about grief stories and how they inform our lives, and that if we lost our home to a house fire, it would be a grief moment, but we wouldn't. It would be just a gift for the next phase of our life. The reason we got rid of it, insurance, was that Woody had a little wood stand out on the front, and recently in Victoria, where we live, a family whose kids had an egg stand just selling surplus eggs out onto the road. They lost their house, and the insurance company didn't cover it because they had this little stand which was hardly making any money, but just sort of covering costs. And it was null and void because the house wasn't under a commercial commercial insurance policy. So, just this sort of not wanting to be part of that, not wanting to give. And this gets back to the household audit. Like, we don't want subscriptions. We don't need this. We don't need cars. We don't need all of this stuff. And slowly, bit by bit, we've realized that to be time rich and augment one's own cultural and biophysical activities each day, it really requires making some clear decisions, saying no to a whole lot of things in order to say yes to other things.
So what are we saying yes to? I think it would be a really good idea for us to talk about some of the kind of household things that we've given up, or some of the household hacks that we do to make sure that we can stay time rich, and that we do with all this time richness.
Yeah. So we don't try to grow all our own vegetables, for example. Yeah. We grow a goodly amount, like maybe 50% of our vegetables. We farm and hunt for the great majority of our meat, although there's a lot of gift exchange in that as well.
And roadkill, another gift exchange.
Yeah, and we're the home for unwanted roosters. I think this is the other thing, that if you're a kind of if you normalize a collapse or descent economy earlier, there's a huge amount of abundance that just requires our time to process. So, for example, every other week, one or two roosters get dropped off to us. They go into the cellar overnight, and then we dispatch them the next day and have a roast and put one in the freezer. That's like one little thing that happens at the moment. There's just an abundance of wood bluet mushrooms and saffron milkcaps, and they're being preserved and pickled and eaten with our hens' eggs for breakfast. There's neighborhood exchanges with neighbors at the moment. One of our neighbors, Andrew, works out at a little deli or a small goods
establishment
farm,
yeah,
and he brings he occasionally brings. We don't have any. It's a pork place. We don't have anything with nitrates, but he'll occasionally bring us pork belly, and we'll swap him for some raw milk yogurt that we've made. There's probably 80 households comprising of around 200 people, 250 people that we are in that constant flow of gifts with. Some weekly, some monthly, some just once a year or twice a year. But there's just this constant movement of excess and surplus. And what we've discovered over the years is that when there's scarcity in one place, there's abundance in another, depending on our activities. And the more of us that are time rich and have time to make and produce and ferment and to store and to grow and to hunt and to take unwanted roosters, the more there is to enter the flow of gifts, what we call a flow of gifts economy. And that is an unregistered, like with Andrew, with our neighbor, that with the pork belly for the exchange for the yogurt, that is more formal. And it's not because there isn't trust with Andrew, but he's established that. He just sort of likes this sort of exact transaction. But most gifts are just in a flow between those 80 households where there isn't, like, we've all got each other's back.
And this is, there's a, I feel like we just need to clarify, because in the chat, people are saying, is there a chat group for this 200 people?
Oh, no.
So this is, we live in a village. There's only, in our whole region here, there's like 4,000 people. So it's we live in a small town. So they're all informal and they're all nuanced relationships. And some of those 250 people are in our street. So we just, we message each other, we walk over, we see each other, we wave. So it's not a group. It's not a formal group. People are saying, is it word of mouth?
Well, there's many chat groups too. Like there's chat groups for all the different activities. There's there's a general chat group which is closest to that question called Responding Together, which is households that have surplus, and so there is a signal group.
Social network, yes.
Yeah.
But it's a loose network. I wouldn't even call it a network.
Yeah.
Network sort of like it's just sort of mycelial.
Yeah. And it might be I'm at the local tip salvaging some things in my bike trailer, and there's a huge piece of glass, a glass panel, and I'm building a glass house. And a friend's rocked up unloading something from his trailer, and I say, hey, do you want to run this home? And then he goes, sure. And then we walk it in together. And then I go to the cellar and I get a couple of things that he's interested in. We go into the cellar together. And he goes, yeah, I'd love some of that. I'll love some of that. The direct exchange there and then is not necessary. It all depends on the relationship.
So, for example, a couple of days ago, there's a woman who's recently moved to this community. Who's an older woman. And she put in one of the kind of general chat groups, not the Responding Together, not a specific one. I'm new to the area. I know that I need to learn about wood. Can somebody come and split my wood for me? And so this morning, Patrick and Woody went up and they split all of her wood. And she's not well at the moment, but she's going to be giving them or us some beautiful loaves, gluten-free loaves, seed bread loaves that she makes. So it wasn't, they didn't do it for the exchange. They did it because he's an older woman who needs help, and they've got the brawn to do that and the know-how and the tools to help her. And then the gift is just sort of a bonus.
Yeah. Just also for clarity, we're in the Southern Hemisphere here, as you probably all know.
So wood is on our minds at the moment.
And houses are cold, and a number of friends have
So somebody said here, Lizzie, reciprocity. It is amazing we can't say the language for this beyond gifting groups. Um, and that's true because this is a new way of being. This is not what, I mean, it's a new old way of being. But I think also recognizing gifts is a skill that we have to remember.
Yeah.
And often when we're, working out kind of a loose exchange with somebody, neighborhoodism, I love it. um, yeah, and they might say, well, I haven't got anything to offer. It's like, you've got a sewing machine, you know how to sew. It's like, I'd love you to patch up all of our jeans. It's like just sort of valuing again, and even hand-me-downs, that we don't often think of that as a gift or as something, this is, or even making. There's a guy who takes Patrick to soccer games when they play away games, and I always make him a bowl of lunch, like a takeaway container of Tupperware of lunch. And just these little acts of reciprocity, as they're kind of social lubricants, the new social lubricant. Just to, so he's going to keep taking Patrick because he won't accept money for petrol, but he's happy to accept, rabbit stew.
Yeah. And also, I think on that, like when we first started trying to establish economies of gift or alternative economies, that economy is this hard line thing that you have to be kind of brutal at to be good and celebrated, and that it should never sort of cross into love. But when we start to value hand-me-down clothes, for example, as part of a gift and love economy, and then start to actually walk back, like we did, 100% reliance on the monetary economy by actually just factoring all the stuff that is already in the gift economy and valuing that. And like we have this community op shop, which is run by volunteers. And this is what we all also wanted to talk about, all the groups. So Meg mentioned the groups we've been involved in starting, but there's a whole lot of other groups, like you mentioned the Goat Club, and there's the community op shop. There's the tip shop, which is sort of a council group, but it's made up by staff there that we've formed relationships with, because their bosses, the bureaucrats, don't really want to encourage recycling or salvaging of materials, but by forging relationships with local people who work there, we've been able to bend the rules, the over the top safety rules about reclaiming really, really fantastic materials. The local tip shop is our hardware. Almost all of the building that's taken place here after the initial building was built has come from the tip. So relationships there. So that's why I put them into a community group, because the people that work there are part of the community, and they value the upcycling of things. The bushfire mitigation group I was on for 2.5 years, just meeting many different people in the town. And there was a couple of us that were the permaculturalists in that group, but many of those folk were from the CFA or from other they were community consultants from other parts of the town. Even some of the tourist accommodation people were involved, and it was just, and like the soccer and the cricket clubs that we're a part of, being led there by our kids. That's a great opening and broadening again to the cultural other, and seeing what sort of community can take place there too. And so, I think expanding ourselves politically and socially, and just understanding that a village is not just those who think like us, like maybe an intentional community. Really understanding a village made up of many different people, and sometimes there's conflict. But the best way to get along and to broaden everybody's self-interest of being well, eating well, not handing out our what monies we have to big, powerful industries and people. So I think there's a huge amount of unity just on that across the political spectrum. People do not like handing their money over to allopoetical players who are in there to extract and fleece and control. So
somebody's asked the question here. Any tips? What does it say from Lizzie? Any tips for reducing the bureaucracy and staying with the heart in group formations?
Yep.
By the way, I live near Canberra, where everyone expects a board or a committee to do the organising.
Yeah, so we are big advocates for not committee meetings.
And no meetings.
Yeah, when we ran the community gardens, we would garden and discuss business as it arose. We were doing, saying. If we ever had a meeting where we sat around, everyone would just die. Yeah. For just like it would be So it's just not. It's not to our organizational interest. When we gather for the wild fennel for a herbal circle, it's in someone's backyard and usually a fire circle. People bring different herbs and we all go around checking in with what plant is moving us or what we're working with at the moment. None of this needs bureaucracy. Like we.
But I think also not being incorporated is key because then you don't need to have meetings.
And also just the beauty of small grassroots groups that don't need to raise money for insurance, that don't need to raise money for buildings, that don't need to basically debt-free, bureaucracy-free organization.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about Fire Choir, which is the Pride Weekly. Does that mean every 3 weeks? Whatever it is, every 3 week men's circle that Patrick is part of. And their leadership group is expanding, but that's not necessarily leading to more bureaucracy or more complication. It's like it's more clarity, more people who have the skills to light the fire, to hold the circles.
And capacity.
And capacity. Yeah. That's right.
Yes. Yeah. So organization is key, and it's good that not one household does all the organizing, because we did find that was pretty intense. So what Meg and I have been really doing of the last decade is expanding people's skills, sometimes going away for half a year or a year, so people have to step into those roles, but also really encouraging younger folk to step into those leadership roles or organizational roles. And that's been a really great process. And that means many different households are holding, which is like the community sufficient model. It's not like one household is burnt out. And the other households are not getting the skills to co-organize.
Yeah. I'd just like to shift the focus a little bit, because we're talking about our household. There's a lot of you talking about what we do, but I feel like we also need to talk about Lily Pilly, who's our Jack Russell, and Woody, who's our 13-year-old, because community sufficiency also is part of their realities as well. For example, Lily Pilly eats generally 1 rabbit a week. So when Patrick and Woody go out hunting and they bring back a bunch of rabbits, the ones that are gut shot, so where the intestines have exploded and that affects the taste of the meat, we don't want to eat them necessarily, but Lily Pilly's really happy to. So we skin and we butcher it and we put it into 7 parts in a plastic bag in the freezer. And then after every week, the beginning of each week, we take out a bag, and that's her food for the week. And this is Patrick and Woody go hunting at friends' places, at farms who have an excess of rabbits. So this is, you know, a biological control. So this is Lily Pilly being biological control via Patrick and Woody's skills and know-how. So she's also part of this community sufficient model. And also Woody being, you know, he's an unschooled, a non-schooled participant in life. And, you know, he helps every day, and he doesn't receive pocket money. There's no money that changes hands. He's just a participant in this household as we are.
Well, he understands that the skills he learns in the homesteading part of the day in the morning are empowering him to have skills that he can then apply in his own way. So in the afternoons where he is in the workshop or down by the lake fishing or whatever he's doing, there is this learning that's come from the morning, and then there's the integration into what he really wants to focus on. So in the morning, it's like what we all need to be doing, even though Meg and I will try to organize the jobs, and he's getting to the age where he's sometimes suggesting them, saying, we're actually a bit low on wood, Dad, why don't I start with chopping a few rounds of wood and I'll bring them into the house to start with.
And often that's when he's cold and needs to get warm outside.
Yeah, so so I think, I mean, what we've seen a lot of, because we run a forest kids group called Forest and Free. What we see, even in that group of really sort of resilient kids, is that many aren't required to do anything in the house, and there is this I think quite problematic thing that's crept into very affluent societies, that children, well, it's quite often children are so busy at school, they have so much homework, we don't want to ask them to do anything, and kind of understand that when your life is so compressed. It's quite a compassionate thing for the parents to say, well, you know, they can just veg out. But the sad thing about that is that real skills that these kids are going to need to know for the future, not necessarily complex mathematical equations, but actually the skills of knowing how to split a log of wood, to gather food, to
hunt a rabbit, skin a rabbit, to cut a rabbit.
Yeah, to process, to grow, to ferment, all of this stuff, even to glean and even to hunt. That these things are actually not just sort of like lifestyle choices. These are things that will be right back on our doorsteps within a very short period of time, and that more people, regardless of where we are, obviously our context of where we're living, whether it's right in the city to right out back in regional areas to somewhere in between, context changes everything. And how we're going to adapt to a collapsed economy and do well and understand flows of abundance and flows of gifts, and when scarcity is okay, that we all emotionally but also economically enter periods of scarcity, and that's okay. And it's sort of, I feel like with cheap oil and this economy for the last 40 years, we're living a lovely dream that is right at the end of its time. And so, the more parents particularly, but community groups can teach children skills, that's where the neighbors come in as well. The amount of things that friends of ours have learnt from that neighborly uncle who's in the workshop, and that old school way of picking up skills that your mum and dad may not have. Like, that's where community sufficiency becomes rich again, when we have trusting relations with people, and that our kids grow from those relationships of difference. And
I think that point of that word difference is also really important. We're not just this is addressing Martin's question I feel like, diversity is key in any community. And we're not just our 250 people who we are in this broad gift economy exchange with. They're not permies necessarily. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Our neighbours in this street we're in gift exchanges with all the time, and they're not permies.
They might be just old school frugalists. Or just like, or quite wealthy, but they can't stand waste because they've been raised like that. Or
just low income,
very low income, and just incredibly pragmatic.
So this is true community sufficiency. Is the whole community. This is not just this section of the community. We're happy to be in relationship with whoever needs anything or whoever has anything to offer. And
also that in that group, that we are describing it this way, that in that group of what we sort of see as our radius of 250 odd folk, the storying of it from each of those individuals will be completely different.
And that's the beauty of the gift economy, is that every single relationship is different, and it includes everybody's stories.
And I think once we start to hold something like, like this is the club, and
where's the ticket?
Where's the ticket? That's when it becomes fragile. Whereas when it's mutable and rolling in relationship, and relationships key, that's when it becomes like an infectious and an energetic thing that people want to be involved with. And it doesn't, it can be the lowest level of, community is not, there's this sort of idea of that you build a community. People come up from the city saying, we're here to build community. And, or I know what this town needs is quite a common thing. But the thing is that community happens through little gestures, day-to-day gestures with many different people that build and build and build over years and years and years, building greater levels of trust and
familiarity and routines and belonging.
Sometimes they sour too. Sometimes some of those relationships sour because someone's heard something and, village gossip, and then a few years later it grows again because, I thought you meant this, or I thought you said this, or
and some people who we've been in gift exchanges with has been really beautiful, and then something has happened and they haven't had capacity, so it's just stopped. But it's like a pause because it's taking into consideration everybody's lives and everybody's stories. That brings us to 8 o'clock. I reckon, it's been great. I've got the phone here and I've got the laptop here where I'm also looking at the chat, so that seems to work well. But if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself, introduce yourself. We'd love to hear your questions. And you don't need to put your hand up because I don't know how to look at that, but if you just want to unmute and ask or put in the chat, that would be super.
I've got a question. Hey.
Hi guys.
How you going? My name's Chris. Advice for someone like me. So I suffer a lot from sort of rage around injustice in the world, and I sort of get that vibe a little bit from Patrick as well, that he might have visited some of that and dealt with it. So someone like me who's trying to come to terms with my being in a system that I don't agree with, and I've been following you guys for a while, since Ren has introduced me to you guys. How can I be in a world, as I move into my heart-centered being in community, in a world that is so structurally organized in, I don't want to say evil, but this negatively polarized sort of, I think you get the gist of what Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
I am empathic. I don't think I didn't want to be, but I feel it, and I feel the pain, and it's and under the rage is grief. Any advice for me? Yeah.
That's a beautiful question. I might have a go at that.
Good idea.
Yeah, as you rightly pointed out, I've been in relationship with that, with the wanting to be, grounded in all the beauty and all the possibility of living and revillaging and reculturing, and also developing over the years a relationship between knowing enough of what's happening in the in that big, I guess, the industrial complex, or what I call hypertechnicity world, and not by any means obfuscating or pretending that that doesn't exist. That in many ways that world and its immorality has really forged this politic and poetic of permaculture that we live, so that underpins the ethics. I think for me the realization, helped by Indigenous friends of mine, that being caught up in the big stories is a colonial project, that it's a sort of subversive colonial hold of our lives by keeping us in despair for all the big and terrible suffering events. And it because it's an attention economy, and the more our attention is in that suffering, the less empowered we are to act. And so I think by bringing consciousness that if we're feeling demoralized and in pain for the suffering and the brutality of savage men, mostly, across the world, then that is holding us from stepping in and revillaging and reculturing the new world, the new old world that we're trying to reclaim. Yeah. And so I think for me, it's a dance between having enough awareness, which feeds my energy to walk and talk this much more humble economy, this economy of root and seed and earth.
Can I have a go at also answering that? I don't have the anger that you're saying, Chris, and that I've witnessed in Patrick. I have more of the despair part. But I think, having been with Patrick for 20 years tomorrow, also to the importance of feeling all the feelings. If there's rage, to have a safe place to express it. And I've really seen over the last 7.5 years, nearly 8 years of us sitting in circle, that we have this place to be witnessed by our community to express all the things that we're feeling. And sometimes I'm expressing the same thing, the same despair or the same anguish month after month. And then somehow it shifts and it dissipates and it, is gobbled up by the fire and the stars.
Yeah.
But I think just owning them and not trying to, see it as a hole that we can spend our way out of or binge watch our way out of like the culture wants us to, but actually just sitting with it. It's uncomfortable to feel that rage, but it's an appropriate response as well, because we're part of a culture that these values we're not aligned with, and it's a big fuck off imposing culture. And whether we're empaths or not, or whether we're just regular sensitive feeling people, emotions are they're messengers.
And I think I've come to the acceptance in the last few years that when an empire is dying, it it is at its most destructive and its most violent and most crazy. And so there's a lot more. What I've come to terms with is that there is a lot more suffering in the world to come. And that's why it's even more important that we're out of the ruins and the rubble and the suffering, that we're, as Meg says, sitting in circle and being witnessed for that suffering. And even I guess because there are so many griefs. There's the griefs that we hold that are much closer to home, and then there are the big world griefs, and there's a huge range of them. And so to be witnessed and to allow that anger to have a place that is not being put into someone else, but actually given as a gift. So I think that's probably enough maybe to go on with that. But really feeling you there, brother.
Yeah, and thanks for the question. A couple of questions that we have in the chat. One from, I think you pronounce it Tammy. What are the gifts in the gift economy for us? I don't think we really look at it like that. Like, what are the gifts? If it's your birthday party and you don't get something that you need, you don't see that as a gap in the gifts. We're just so grateful to receive any gift that is given to us. But
like plastic bags, for example, like wherever we don't buy plastic bags, of course, but like we're always getting them somehow, and so we're washing them out and hanging them out and reusing them and then putting bunnies in them and
then cursing ourselves because we're worried about the microplastics, but using them anyway because what else are we going to put the bunnies in? But I did for today, for example, I was making a stew and I used the last of our preserved lemons. So the forest group that we facilitate runs, it's $20 per session per day if you're in the monetary economy, and for families that aren't, that are in the gift economy. So I put in the group today, if anybody has any preserved lemons that they'd like to give us next week as a gift exchange, we'd be most grateful, because our lemons are almost ripe but still on the tree. And then a couple of the mums said, yes, we've got some. So it's also seeing what we need and then asking for it.
Yeah, and you would think that in our local area that all the zucchinis or all the lemons or all the tomatoes would come on at once, but we are all in different little bioregions, and our trees and plants and veggies are all coming on at different areas at times, depending on when we planted them. And so it's really interesting, these waves of abundance and scarcity. And just to note that if your household's in a bit of a scarcity mode, just that's the because like what we're talking about is not austerity. Austerity is this horrible imposed thing that governments put onto their populations that have to pay off this debt that usually the bankers have engineered. And bring in some really horrible things, and we're going to see a lot of that happen. But this is the opposite of austerity. This is like working within natural cycles of abundance and scarcity.
A question from Martin, a practical question about what carbs do we eat, and do we have to source those from the gift of the monetary economy? So we eat a lot of potatoes. We had venison stew with mashed potatoes tonight. So good.
Venison shot by our eldest son, and potatoes grown by Woody and I, and put together by Meg.
We also eat rice, brown and white rice that is rain-fed. It comes from Slater Farms, so grown by the Slater family up in the Northern Rivers. And rain-fed means that it's not irrigated, and that's biodynamically grown. We're also bread makers, and we buy our grain in bulk, so 25 kilograms at a time, from Burrum Biodynamics, which is
a few hours north of here
by car. And we also have a grain mill, which was gifted to us many years ago. So we grind the flour and make our own sourdough.
But one of our elders, Sue Dennett, who's related to Burren Biodynamics, that family, Tanya and Steve, she organizes one pickup every few months for a whole bunch of people around here. So while we have the food co-op and they get Burren products through Sue, Sue also gets other bulk buy-ins directly from that farm.
Yeah. And so for Patrick and I, we prefer to eat high protein, low carb diet. But in winter, we are having carbs with most meals. We did have roast carrot soup today. And I had some to give to a neighbour who's just come out of hospital, and then Patrick nearly finished the whole pot because we didn't have carbs with it. So this is also, But
also we're trying to limit our reliance on monocultures and have been for a long time. So we've been sharing videos over the years about turning our acorns, which are in abundance here, into meal, into a acorn meal for cakes and breads and things like that. So just like tree crops, psyllium husks going into bread so we can forage psyllium. Psyllium's an expensive thing, a bit like garlic. If you buy good quality garlic and psyllium, they're really expensive, but garlic is so easy to grow here and psyllium is so easy to forage here. So it's like working out what all the really expensive things that we really like eating and are locally grown here is, and then putting the labor into that. That's been a big journey, just like layering all of that knowledge so that it becomes year after year less and less, there's less and less effort. I think that's the exciting thing, that the first few years in our transition, everything seemed hard and we were really trying to go very fast.
And giving things up felt really scary for me anyway.
Yeah. But then once we got to a certain point, everything just started rolling and it got its momentum. And now it's so, so with our eldest boy, Zeph, who some of you might know through the documentary, The New Peasants, got into a lot of trouble as a teenager. He was still very much 1 foot in the old world and 1 foot in our world. And I think the two household systems he was struggling with, or the two cultural systems, was a part of his sort of chaotic initiation into adulthood. But with Woody, it's like, I think through Zeph's story, and Zeph got into a lot of trouble when he went back to school, and the local high school, it just just the downer and put down culture was really big there. So Zeph's, the story that brought so much grief in Zeph's sort of radical self-initiation or chaotic initiation was that it motivated us to create this school for or this bush group for kids, and that has just been such a rich part of our week.
A couple of people in the chat are asking about, or somebody asked about bunnies, like how do you know if they're good to eat in terms of calisi and
intuition. It just gets to intuition. You can look at the liver and
you can look at the eyes.
You can look at the eyes. It's the same with roadkill. Like our ancestors ate things that our microbiomes just couldn't process today. But we were hardy, and you can practice hardiness and intuition. Like if you come across roadkill and it smells terrible, then it's probably gone past it.
Well, you probably just need to add more spice when you're cooking it up.
But like if the part of the body that isn't bruised or punctured, I mean, I've heard lately, there's myxomatosis back in the area, and every few years, there's calicivirus in the area, but but it, it might be out to the east and we're hunting out west and we haven't seen it at all. And maybe those man-made illnesses, rather than having a population that actually says, well, why aren't we eating this feral abundance? That would be both good ecologically, but also we wouldn't have to farm so much and we wouldn't need so many industrial inputs. And that's really been our approach. Like, what is undervalued? What is it that we can build an economy on that hyper-technicibility can't get its hands on? The banker's realm doesn't see it, doesn't understand it, or it stinks a bit.
We've got friends who eat a lot of carp fish and hunt rabbits, and they call themselves pestitarians because they eat a lot of pests. I thought that was pretty cute.
Yeah.
A couple of people are asking about Goat Club, about the nuts and bolts of it. I remember some of the topics that we talked about when we went there, but I don't know, were they insured? There was a mailing list? It was a long time ago. Was that 15 years ago that we went?
But I think it's gone up until very recently. Yeah. I think it might have stopped. But look, it's really, they used a small primary school as the, and at that primary school they had goats and they had some other animals there as well. So it was run pretty much by one household, but people who had goats would come and they would just troubleshoot. They just gathered and they would talk through. Sometimes there would be a guest speaker who would do a presentation on, say, foot rot or...
I remember going to one where somebody brought in a whole lot of weeds, edible weeds, and also some ones that were poisonous. And also we made goat milk ice cream.
Yes.
One of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all just sort of anything goat related.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and
informal.
I think that's the thing, to demystify these groups. It's like Meg wanted to... I had a whole row of cabbages one year. They all went off, and it was like, right, instead of just giving them all away, why don't we try and hold that abundance up?
And I've made sauerkraut successfully once and was invited to run a workshop on it. So I did that and it worked out well, and then just sort of led on from there.
Yeah. I think also that's the thing, it's just stepping into the unknown. Courage is a really big part of this. To incrementally step across from the big global pool of money, the monetary economy, and all of that entails, and all of that represents this slow incremental step-by-step approach away from it. Courage is probably the most important thing. And not to be bullish or gung-ho necessarily like I was in the beginning and just demoralize myself, like went too fast. But then if you go too slow, you also, like, the energy goes out of it. It's like, just keep applying it. You may not know where you're heading, but you know where, well, this is for us. We knew what we were heading away from, but we didn't have necessarily a clear plan. But putting knowledges and relationships are the basis, and courage are the basis of alternative economies.
And also, for example, with these online sessions in July that we're offering, we're not experts. We don't have degrees. We're not professionals in this area. We've just got experience to share. So also seeing that knowledge and experience that you have, and maybe other people might like to have that knowledge as well. So offering it in that respect too, just that you've got something to share, I think is really important. We had a question before about the food co-op, about sort of how that's set up. Is it volunteer run? So yes, it's volunteer run. They have a small membership fee. I think it's about $25 for waged and $20 unwaged for the year. They have only a 10% markup on dry goods. So when they first started 13 years ago, nearly 14 years ago, and I know because it started just when Woody was born, so it's as old as him, it started off, as I said before, in a very small, it was actually like a Harry Potter cupboard under the stairs at the neighbourhood centre, and they had like 4 things. They had rice and oats and flour and
salt or something.
Yeah, one other thing, and they had one scales and it was just a weigh and pay system. And then after they got their processes kind of running smoothly, then they were ready to expand. Then they expanded into the cupboard next door to that one, which was slightly bigger. And now they've evolved into a really big space and actually looking. They've just received a grant and have money now to buy a premises. So they're just looking for something that's central. So.
But that's small and incremental, like starting with 4 things that no one can go wrong when you start.
There's nothing to lose.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like a little business that I have friends that want to set up a business and they think they have to find $50,000 or $100,000 to do it. It's like, don't do that. Yeah. You'll be beholden to the banks forever. Yeah. Just like do what you love and just craft it out of the earth and in a very small scale. And then I think there's this sort of the hubris culture, that the dominant hubris culture that we have to attend to, because that's the thing that we get caught up in debt. We get caught up in overcommitting to things that are really time intensive.
I reckon we've got time for one more question. One of the questions was about dumpster diving and if we eat waste or surplus foods from supermarkets or the big shops.
We dumpster for mostly building materials and hardwood or things like that. But we receive dumpster dived gifts from younger friends who aren't as yet set up as much as we are in terms of our food. But we're not reliant on it. I think,
and I'm a bit fussy. I don't want to be eating food with loads and loads of numbers in it, or that comes in a packet, or that has lots of industrial inputs. I'm really happy just to go without, and just to have less, and just to eat very simply. I am partial to some fancy cheeses if they come my way from the dumpster.
Yeah, and I think dumpstering is a really powerful, particularly, in an urban context, it's a really powerful way. But we've got a forest full of food. We've got there's just streets full of weeds. There's so much here.
Yeah, you're right. I think if we were living in a city, we'd be more reliant on it.
Yeah.
Any last questions? Thanks everybody for your comments. I think.
What is it?
Some clapping. Thank you, Megan Patrick. This is all very exciting. Yes, thanks, Tash. Thanks, everybody. We've got one more session coming up in our July. Thanks, Lavina. We've got one more session coming up, which is next Thursday. It's daytime, 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
It's a house and garden tour, so we're going to be taking you through all the nuts and bolts of all the main hubs, that the engine rooms of what drives our little household economy and the conduits out into the community.
Someone's asking when we're returning to in-person house and garden tours. In the warmer months, definitely in the springtime. And we'll also be running different kinds of workshops, which we've got ideas for as well. So we have a blog. Our website is artistasfamily.is. So we have a blog, and you can subscribe to that. We've also got a YouTube channel and a Substack. Great. Thanks so much, everybody. Somebody's just posted something here. I just want to share an Oceania Hub, a connection circle on localizational or bioregioning, no fee on Mighty Network platform and on monthly come along if you're interested. Thanks, Lizzie. I've just realised who you are, Lizzie, from Lizzie Smith, Worksmith. Anyway, nice to see you. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming along. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much.